good evening or good morning to all of you. It is encouraging to see all of you in this webinar. Today, our topic is Empowering Tomorrow's Leader, the role of youth in agri-food systems transformation. We have a very nice set of speakers today from different backgrounds, of course, from youth, from different part of the world, from FAO, from private sector, from company. So this is an opportunity to share knowledge and experience about the role of youth in agri-food system transformation. We will hear some best practices and some innovations that the youth have done globally. And then we will have time for Q&A at the end of the session. My name is Yurdi Yasmi, and I'm working as a Special Coordinator for the Plant Production and Protection Division, NSP, here in FAO headquarters in Rome. Before we start, it is a great pleasure for me to invite Mr. Benjamin Davis, the Director for Rural Transformation and Gender Equality Division, or ESP, to give his welcoming remark. Ben, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Yurdi, and hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I wanted to thank you for joining us today for the webinar on empowering tomorrow's leaders, the role of youth in agri-food systems transformation. And I really am happy that so many of you have gathered here with a shared commitment to fostering innovation and sustainability in agri-food systems through empowering youth. Today's webinar, as mentioned, is organized by FAO's Plant Production and Protection Division in collaboration with the newly established FAO Office of Youth and Women, and with the full support of our regional offices in Africa and in Asia and the Pacific. I'm very pleased to see my colleagues Abebe, the Assistant Director General and the Regional Representative for Africa, and JJ, his counterpart for Asia, who are among the speakers, as well as my other colleagues in the regions and here at headquarters. As you all know, our agri-food systems face many challenges, including climate change, conflict, population growth, continued food insecurity. And with less than 6 years to go to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it's imperative that we accelerate our efforts across all fronts. 20 targets across 6 SDGs are strongly focused on youth. These include zero hunger, quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities, and climate action. And I think what we want to stress here today is that youth are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they are in fact the leaders of today. However, they face many significant barriers specific to their age, including limited access to resources, to education, and to employment opportunities. According to a recent report by the International Labour Organization, ILO, on global employment trends for youth, from 2010 to 2019, youth employment shifted away from agriculture towards the service sector. Now, it's not surprising that many young people are drawn to other sectors or seek opportunities in urban centers, and this leads a gap in the agri-food workforce, as well as a gap, let's say, in rural societies and rural culture. So today our discussion will focus on 3 main objectives. First, to showcase successful case studies where youth has significantly contributed to and benefited from agri-food industries. Second, to discuss the role of technology in modernizing agri-food systems and improving productivity. And third, to emphasize the importance of youth participation in sustainable practices and environmental stewardship. I would also like to emphasize some success stories of FAO's work on empowering youth, which will form part of the upcoming report on the status of youth in agri-food systems, which we in my division are producing. First, in Nigeria, FAO partnered with the federal government to launch the National Youth Employment and Agricultural Program, in which over 10,000 young agripreneurs were trained in agribusiness. Second, in Sri Lanka, 400 schools are engaged in an FAO Entrepreneurial Schools Gardens program, in which students with special needs are learning vital agricultural and entrepreneurial skills and improving their nutrition. Third, in the Dominican Republic, through FAO's training programs, young farmers learned about sustainable farming practices such as crop rotation and organic farming, and also learned about the importance of biodiversity and soil conservation. Finally, I also just want to give an honorable mention to the important work of Farmer Field Schools and the Digital Villages Initiative in Europe and Central Asia as well. These success stories demonstrate that youth are not merely beneficiaries of change, but actual active catalysts for change. And their involvement is crucial for achieving the SDGs and for transforming agri-food systems in a sustainable and resilient way. I take this opportunity to call upon all participants to support and invest in youth as key players in the transformation of agri-food systems. So please share the insights and knowledge gained from this webinar within your networks, and let's work together to create a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive future. Today's event is part of a global momentum of initiatives around youth. The upcoming fourth session of the World Food Forum in October 2024 will focus on global youth action. There's a series of preparatory activities leading up to our Status of Youth in Agri-Food Systems report, which I mentioned before, which will come out in 2025, as well as the cross-cutting work in our division around youth that we're leading, as well as other programmatic activities at regional and country level. And so I very much look forward to the fruitful discussions and outcomes from today's webinar, and I wish everyone a good discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben, for your encouraging welcome remarks and also giving us, various initiatives across the house here at FAO in terms of youth, including the report that your division is working. So certainly, colleagues, participants, youth is an important subject, for all of us. I also would like to welcome all of you who just joined. I can see that more than 200 participants from across the globe has joined this webinar. You are welcome to say your name and where you are from in the chat. Without further ado, now I would like to invite Mr. Jongjin Kim, FAO Assistant Director General and Regional Representative for Asia and the Pacific region, to give his opening remark focusing on youth and technological innovation in Asia. JJ, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jordi. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, all the participants. I see more than 199 participants for now. Let me first extend a warm welcome to all of you, youth, indigenous communities who are joining us today. I very much appreciated this opportunity to share a few words for the opening remarks at this very important webinar. I think this is very apt because Asia and the Pacific region has been home to largest share of the youth population of the world for decades. This year, the projected share of this region in global youth population is estimated to be 58%. And such a large young population presents a big opportunity as well as a challenge to agriculture and food system. Perhaps the biggest opportunity would be the demographic dividends. The young population can drive economic growth, as we see. And certainly, also achieving SDGs, particularly SDG 1 and 2, through the development of efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food system. Among many challenges young population in Asia and the Pacific facing, I would highlight first, a lack of interest in traditional agriculture, often perceived less attractive career path. Another would be limited access to resources, including land, water, and financing. Of course, on top of other challenges such as climate change and the market instability and many others. The question is how to ensure that the youth derive gainful employment, especially in food and agriculture, and they continuously engage to catalyze the innovation in agri-food system. The Director General, Dr. Chu Dong-myo, has always emphasized the role of youth, and the newly created Office of Youth and Women signifies FAO's commitment to inclusive and forward-looking agenda. We are all aware that youth can be valuable as to develop a digital ecosystem and transform science and technology into tools and products that can be used by producers and processors. Also to foster a mindset of entrepreneurship, which helps to create a new business across the agricultural system. To creatively respond to the needs and the new demands with faster adaptation to changes. Also to be conscious to sustainable and healthy and good for planet for a better environment. I think today's youth are fortunate as they have access to a wide range of innovations and the technologies and a vast pool of scientific knowledge. In the Asia and Pacific region, FAO is fostering a platform for youth to share their ideas and innovations. March this year in Bangkok, with the UN Food System Coordination Hub, we organized a week-long training for agri-food system leaders under the age of 30. In November this year, we will be organizing the next edition of the Seeds Solution Forum. And in December, we will organize International Soil and Water Forum, which will also showcase the participation of youth in conserving and optimizing the use of precious natural resources and the environment. Also, as we all know, globally, the World Food Forum provides an excellent opportunity for youth to showcase the innovation talent. So I very much look forward to hearing about very exciting examples of youth in agri-food system transformation today, and being a part of this knowledge exchange event. So thank you very much for your participation. Over to you, Yuri.
JJ, thank you very much for your excellent remarks, JJ, showing the importance of youth and also how you engage the youth in Asia and the Pacific regions in various forums. Very exciting. Thank you very much. Now we will move on to the next speaker, who will be talking about shaping the future of agri-food systems, why youth matters. I would like to invite my colleague, Mr. Kazuki Kitaoka, Senior Program Officer at the Office of Youth and Women of FAO. Kazuki, over to you.
Thank you so much, Yuri, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I have a small presentation. I think we shared that with NSL. I don't know if I should share the screen or if you will share the screen.
Either way, it will work, Kazuki.
All right. Then let me perhaps just share my screen in this case. See, just do that. And can you see the?
Yes, you just put it in the presentation. Okay, it's good now. Go ahead.
Very good. So once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and Thank you so much for this invitation to this important webinar highlighting the role of youth in agri-food system transformation. Thanks, Yuri, for the introduction. My name is Kazuki, and I'm working in this new office, the FAO Office of Youth and Women. And I'm also the coordinator of the World Food Forum, and I'm very glad to hear from the regional director and also from the director of ESP that the World Food Forum is becoming increasingly an important platform for the collaboration we have between FAO and many, many different types of youth groups, networks, and constituencies. And perhaps let me also start with that in mind. When we look back in the many decades that we have been talking about youth, indeed, we have been talking about youth. Very seldomly have we talked with youth, and I think that has really changed in the last 2 decades. For sure, in the last 10 years. I think there's a realization that we cannot think about programs that affect youth without engaging them. And they see it very often themselves. They say, please don't do things about us, without us. It's an essential principle, really, of what we're trying to do as part of the work of on youth in the World Food Forum, to at every step work not only on youth issues, but also with youth on their own future. So it is really inspiring to see now how much attention is being given to youth engagement in this context, in this context of agri-food systems within FAO and across all of the streams and divisions and offices, and of course, most importantly, across all of the decentralized offices. And youth, as we all know, are really critical, and we have always said that it's critical, but I think we very often didn't know how can we actually operationalize work that is this type of engagement with youth. And in particular, because youth as a group is not something that is a stable group. Everybody, including myself, unfortunately, we are moving into youth and we're moving out of youth. So this is by nature a very transient group of people that we are talking about. Nonetheless, we are talking about 1.2 billion young people. So youth is a massive group that we have to talk about. It's accounting 16% of the global population when we only look at the 15 to 24-year-olds. Very often in agri-food systems, we are talking about people that are older than 24. Young farmers very often include people that are in their 30s. So when we include these population groups, then we are talking even considerably more than 16%. And by 2030, in the next 5 years, we project even that this will grow. No, we are talking about almost 1.3 billion in the bracket of 15 to 24. For sure, what we will see as well is that in most countries, youth will take an increasingly important role in agri-food systems and in the agri-food system workforce. In many countries, the agri-food system workforce is aging. Youth needs to be re-attracted to rural areas. We needs to be re-attracted to agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and the entire value chain around our agri-food systems, and also all the services that are necessary, from cargo to support services and so on. So youth will play an extremely important role in this current generation and the next. And the question for us will be, how are we going practically about that? Of course, a lot of training is being done, as Ben was mentioning before. There's a lot of youth-related dialogues have been happening around the world, but how can this be scaled up even further? How can this be made into a more of a movement where we really engage young people, empower young people to become the drivers of their future for their own food security and food future, as we say. And the more important here is when we look in particular at Africa, Asia, Latin America, as across
Kazuki,
the.
Sorry, Kazuki, your slide doesn't move. Many people are not seeing.
Oh,
doesn't move. Sorry. Thank you.
How is it now? Still not moving? Okay, let me go out and in again, perhaps then. It's just small. It's just pictures actually. So it's just, let's see it.
Now it's moved. Yeah.
Oh, now it's moved. Okay. Sorry for that. So this was basically the slide that I wanted to show with for illustrating young people. When we look across the different regions, Africa, Asia, Latin America, 21 to 23% at least of the rural employed youth work in agri-food systems, of course, and this tendency might be even growing. This is why we need to think about how scale alone demands for a more focused approach and an emphasis on youth. When we are actually looking at the design, how we are designing interventions, how we are looking at the sustainability, the resilience of the types of interventions that we are doing, bringing youth along in them, and making long-term development plans that engage youth from the very start, from formulation all the way through implementation, and also in the evaluation and the learning from it. So youth has really a central role in the throughout our program and project cycles. And this kind of long-term development also requires that we need to look at young people as the inheritors of what we are creating and what we are leaving behind in with those interventions, with the outcomes of the transformations that we are working on, and how we are shaping the present is, of course, informing how the future, which is the youth future, is going to look like. So young people, and we have all experienced that. I think young people are bringing very often a slightly fresher perspective to interventions, to programs, to projects. They have often innovative ideas. Sometimes they're also having a different point of view on how to go about the development of their own future. And they definitely, and that I can say, see on a daily basis, working with a lot of young people directly, they have a very strong sense of urgency. So it's something that can't wait, and we see it in some countries when there is young people going into the streets, showing their engagement for the climate. There is a sense of urgency that wants to address the challenges that they are facing, and that they perceive are risks to their futures sooner rather than later. So what we would like to achieve with this engagement that we are looking at in different countries, in the context of different countries, with engaging and empowering youth around agri-food systems, is to channel this urgency, this sense of urgency, this sense of innovation, and these fresh perspectives, and bring that in a constructive way to the work that we are doing, relating to climate change, of course, to food insecurity, to malnutrition, and so on. And by involving them in the program work, in the intervention work, in the decision-making processes, really, we, as we believe, can ensure that some of these actions that we are taking are not only responded in the immediate term, but also in the longer term, and they are linked to the needs and aspirations of young people today for their food security and food future. But of course, youth engagement is not only about addressing challenges. It is also about looking really at massive opportunities. As I said before, a big part of the population are young people. These young people have a sense of urgency and a sense of optimism as well, very often for the future. And young people have the potential to drive economic growth and social development in all countries, as we know, particularly, of course, in rural areas where agriculture is the primary source of livelihoods for millions. And this requires overall changing the perception young people have of agriculture, of fisheries, of forestry. Very often, it is more appealing for young people to look at a career path in the cities. They would like to work on a bit, perhaps what they would perceive as a more viable career path for themselves. They want to do. Perhaps they have the impression that they can earn more money if they're and very often this is obviously the case. So agriculture needs to be made much more appealing, perhaps also through innovation.
Great. Would you like to wrap up?
Yes, I'm wrapping up in one more slide. So I'm coming to that. Thank you, Yuri. So how can we do that in all of our programs, engaging young people effectively? Of course, education and training is one big part of it, knowledge, skills, resources, and so on. But we must also look at how youth in all of their different stages, as innovators, as entrepreneurs, as those who are young farmers, and so on, thinking out of their box, can be engaged in the work that we are doing. So here, let me give you a couple of examples, and then I will hand back to Yuri for that the World Food Forum is working on. We have essentially looked at 5 different areas where we think that engagement with youth and youth empowerment can play an important role in systematically addressing and engaging young people in the different stages of the of FAO's work and operational work, but also policy work. And these are around policy through a youth assembly, in innovation through a youth innovation lab, youth education, harnessing the power of knowledge, of course, on an intergenerational level, but also very importantly, youth culture to address issues that are sometimes very complex in a way that perhaps can be extended in a slightly different manner, and that allows for sense making at different levels. And then perhaps most importantly, local youth action. And here the collaboration in particular with the regional and country offices, with local counterparts, local stakeholder groups, and the creation of local chapters, of youth chapters that can really create the right environment, the infrastructure that we need, overcome the fragmentation amongst youth initiatives in country, and also that allows us to have a single unified group that we can work with at an institutional level. In this group that I said before is extremely fluid and quick moving. So with these 5 programs, we hope to address this institutional and structural lack that we found when we looked at how we can systematically work with youth. And we would really like to invite all of you to work with us in the Office of Youth and Women in further institutionalizing this important work on youth, and of course also on women, but this webinar is on youth specifically. With this new coordination office, we are trying to ensure that youth and also women act as conduits for this work of FAO. Of course, also internally, we are looking at career enrichment and development for FAO employees. But more importantly, externally, by gathering and realizing the innovative ideas and approaches of youth within the FAO mandate and advance that, engage them in the work that we're doing. So with that, I hope that we can together and hand in hand with all of the different youth groups and youth networks that we are working with, and that we have been building up together with many of your the colleagues in the field, for this more sustainable, more resilient, and equitable food future together and hand in hand with young people. And it's critical that we really do this empowerment in a way where we look eye to eye with young people, where we take their ideas seriously, and where we invest as well in supporting youth for the future of our planet. And with that, I thank very much the Plant Protection and Protection Division for organizing this webinar. I think this is an excellent opportunity. I hope I could make my point on the importance of youth, but also how practically we can do it. And Yuri, I'm so sorry that I went over my time, but back to you. You see, I'm very emotionally engaged in this. But yes, thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Kazuki, for your interesting presentation. And a lot of things has been done by the Office of Youth and Women on this. We look forward to supporting your programs. And I'm happy to also recognize the presence of more than 220 people here already. Let's move on, colleague, in keeping with our time. I would like now to invite Ms. Janetta Charlucci, Social Policy Officer, Youth Employment of FAO Office for Africa, based in Ghana. She will be talking about youth employment in agri-food systems. What is the prospect? So, Janetta, the time is yours. Over.
Thank you very much, Yudi, for that introduction. Thank you very much, Yudi, for that introduction. Please confirm whether you can hear me and also see my screen.
Yes, clearly.
Okay, great. It's a bit difficult to come after that act from Kazuki, as he has already highlighted quite a number of the issues, but what I will do is I'll give a bit more of a regional perspective by focusing my intervention on the African region. So to talk about the prospects of youth employment in agri-food systems, I think we need to situate the conversation within the overall trends and drivers that are shaping agri-food systems change in the region. So the first one that my previous speakers have already touched on is with respect to the growing population. So Africa's population is expected to reach 1.7 billion by 2040, which is in just 16 years' time. So, and that is a 70% increase from 2018, when the population was estimated to be about 1 billion. And then beyond that, it's estimated to grow by a further 7 billion by 2050. So this increase in the population naturally results in an increase in food demand, and which is driven increasingly also by growing urbanization. So due to the increase in population, which is occurring mostly in rural areas, it is also leading to rural out migration into cities. So with urbanization comes with also changes in the way people eat, changes in diet, meaning that the food consumption in urban cities is moving towards more prepared food, higher processed foods, which is occurring not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. And then in addition to that, we also have climate change and its attendant impacts. We know that Africa is the region that is most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change due to various factors. So that is also shaping the way agri-food systems are changing due to extreme weather events, due to erratic rainfall, which is due to changes in the way we're using land, changes in biodiversity, all of that leading to impacts on food security and food insecurity. And then we also have technological changes. So with the use of digital technologies, especially mobile and digital platforms, the use of that in agri-food systems is already underway. And a lot of that, some of these innovations also being spearheaded by young people. So these digital technologies have the potential to improve the way we produce food, and it has a potential to also improve market access for farmers, increasing access to information, and increasing access to finance. One of the factors that is not on the slide, but I think it's also good to mention, is the changing geopolitical landscape and the food insecurity that is being driven by conflicts and also impacts of climate change. So all of that, all those contexts also need to be taken into account. Now, in terms of the prospects and what this means for youth, so just to give you a few numbers. So in Africa, the agricultural economy is growing the fastest. So we comparing 4.1 growth rate in the last 20 odd years compared to 2.7% worldwide. And the African Development Bank has estimated that the agribusiness sector would be worth 1 trillion by 2030, which is just in 6 years. So this is a huge opportunity. This is a huge it's a reservoir of opportunity for young people. When we look at also the expected increases in the value of food, zooming down to the sub-regional level, looking at Eastern and Southern Africa. So what do we need to do? What does this mean in terms of prospects? Whilst the trends and drivers present certain challenges, especially with respect to climate change and the impacts of changing consumer patterns on nutrition, obesity, and food insecurity, we can turn these trends and challenges into opportunities that young people can capitalize on. So we need to produce better food. We need to produce more food. So this creates opportunities for young people to produce healthier foods, capitalizing on our traditional foods, adding value in a more nutritionally dense manner. There are young people I know who are creating the health foods, and they're even creating markets for themselves with regards to more nutritious alternatives to certain snacks. So we have those examples in the region. And then when it comes to climate change and its impacts, we can also turn that into an opportunity. The vulnerability means that Africa can lead the way in terms of climate change and adaptation, coming up with solutions that fit our local context. And we can empower young people to be able to drive and lead the way in producing, in coming up and implementing those solutions. So the conversation around green jobs fits within this context. What are the opportunities that young people can capitalize on when it comes to conservation, when it comes to reforestation, when it comes to the bioeconomy? There's a lot of conversation happening around opportunities in the bioeconomy. So looking at all of these, instead of putting on the lens of challenges, we put on the lens of opportunities, turning these into employment and entrepreneurship opportunities all along the value chain, from production to processing to transportation to extension services. Now I just want to zoom in a little bit more on the youth employment challenge. So given the numbers of youth and population growth, we need to create at least 10 to 12 million new jobs until 2035. We don't yet have the estimates beyond 2035, but given the projected increases in the working age population, we can imagine that the numbers will not be any less stark than the 10 to 12 million. So the agri-food sector really needs to play a role in providing these employment opportunities. Not to say that it is not currently providing the opportunities. A lot of young people are involved in the agri-food sector, and both on farm and off farm. but these are not necessarily decent jobs. We need to look at how we can craft high quality, decent work opportunities for young people in this sector. And what that entails is really addressing the specific challenges that young people face when they're engaging in agri-food systems. And my previous speakers have already touched on these. So it's about access to knowledge, skills, and information, access to land, markets, finance, enabling young people to effectively engage in policy dialogue, and the lack of mentorship and adequate support structures that are currently existing. So how do we turn this around? And I will not repeat too much some of what my other colleagues have said, but importantly, we need to look at the mindset. So changing the perception around agriculture. How do we do that concretely? Identifying the youth champions, identifying the champions within the within different stakeholders, financial institutions, other institutions and stakeholders who really are looking at the agri-food sector as a sector of opportunity and promoting those stories. So crafting that narrative that agri-food sector can be a productive and a profitable opportunity for young people. And it's also about giving youth recognition meaning that they're around their potential, understanding their aspirations, understanding their realities and challenges, and reflecting these intentionally in decision-making processes through co-creation. And this is by policymakers, by the development community, and by other agri-food system stakeholders. So we need to intentionally involve young people in policy dialogues, in multi-stakeholder fora, and including youth-specific provisions in government instruments and programs. Talking about connectivity, youth need to be more connected to each other, and that speaks to some of the work that Kazuki just talked about, gathering youth, forging alliances and networks and organizations so that they can have a strong platform with which to engage the policymakers in different policy and decision-making forums. And so this can also be in the form of creating knowledge hubs, exchange visits, matchmaking platforms for young people, young entrepreneurs to also make these linkages to other service providers with the other actors within the agri-food value chain. One example of that I would also like to give is the Rwanda Youth and Agribusiness Forum, which was established with the support of FAO, which gathers young entrepreneurs in the country to effectively network amongst themselves and engage also with relevant policymakers and other stakeholders. Productivity, and this is where a lot of the work that FAO has been doing over the last 20-30 years comes in. So providing young people the knowledge, the technical and business knowledge to be able to effectively engage in the agribusiness sector and capitalize on promising entrepreneurship avenues. So it's about investing in education, in relevant skills, so bridging the skills gap, providing practical and action-oriented training and education. This can include incubation and accelerated programs that are targeted to the specific needs and characteristics of the agri-food sector, mentorship and coaching, exposure to agri-food expos and fairs, and also access to social networks. And agency speaks also to this mindset and recognition change. So really seeing youth as partners in this development process. Now, all these youth-targeted interventions cannot be done in isolation. These need to be accompanied also by interventions that target the promotion of sustainable agri-food systems in general, and ensuring that there's policy coherence between youth-targeted interventions and also sectoral policies. So I think that combination, and this is where all partners should come on board and to promote these different interventions, then we can truly then speak about unlocking, the potential that agri-food systems have for youth and by youth. And then we can really start speaking about how we're harnessing Africa's demographic dividend. These are just examples of FAO work on this. I'll just highlight the investment guidelines for youth in agri-food systems in Africa, which was developed together with the African Union Commission. So when we're talking about exactly how do we ensure that young people are targeted in policies and programs, and also large-scale investment programs, talk about those funded by the Global Environment Facility or the Green Climate Fund. So these investment guidelines provide practical steps on exactly how we can ensure that youth are included in all stages of the project cycle. And then the second guidance materials is this youth-sensitive value chain analysis and development, which can be used in various interventions. I know I am over time. I could keep talking about this, but I'll stop here and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Janetta, thank you very much for these excellent presentations, how to turn challenges to opportunity. Congratulations on various programs that you have in Africa. We learned a lot. Keep up the good work, of course, and thanks again for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, participants, now let's move on to the next topic, which is very interesting. The topic will be agricultural mechanization and digitalization, opportunity to re-engage the youth. I'm pleased to invite Mr. Marzio De Valle, Senior Manager, Cluster Organization Southeast Europe and Turkey of LELI. Marzio, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jordi, for the introduction. Can you see my desk?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you very much again. Thank you for the invitation to share our view on how the agricultural mechanization and digitalization is an opportunity to engage youth. My name is Marzio. I am part of the LELI family. LELI is a family-owned company that has built and now services around under 35,000 robots and digital farming systems in and around dairy barns in over 52 countries. I'm honored to be in your midst again after valuable consultation between FAO and SEMA, European Agricultural Mechanization Association, just a few weeks ago. Today I will discuss the following three topics. First, why are we even talking about the need to engage youth? I will explain why generational renewal and the engagement of youth should be a crucial concern for us. Second, the agricultural machinery industry has a key role in the sustainable innovation. This means that businesses such as LELI have the responsibility towards young farmers and other young people with a heart for nature and farming, including our own young workforce. My third point is that this responsibility, in our opinion, also applies to policymakers. I will therefore conclude with a few recommendations for them. The need to re-engage youth cannot be considered separate from our need for generational renewal. I've gathered some figures to illustrate the relevance of this topic. In the US, farmers are the oldest workforce of all sectors of the economy. In Japan, the average age of farmer now is 68.4 years, exactly 4 years beyond the average retirement age in the OECD group of countries. In the Netherlands, only 4 out of 10 farmers have 55 as a successor. For 6 out of 10, generational renewal is not quite a question of how, but of if. There are other numbers available, and almost all of them paint the same picture. Farming is an aging workforce, more than any other, and it's reaching its limit. At the same time, young people look at the world differently. This is also especially true for sustainability. According to research, the awareness of global sustainability practices is 6 times higher from people younger than 15 compared to people over 70. This also translates to what young people want from their employer. More than half of Gen Z, those who are roughly between 15 and 30 years old, researches the environmental impact and policies of their employer before accepting a job. 1 in 6 have already changed jobs or sector due to the climate concerns, with a quarter saying that we will do so in the future, but also aim to drive sustainability from within. Half of them say their colleagues are pressuring businesses to take action on climate change. So, how does the need for generational renewal and the greater focus on sustainability add up? First and foremost, to state the obvious, we need young farmers because we need food. We need people to produce our nutrition. And in 10 to 20 years, a lot of our aging farmers will not be able to do so anymore. Generational renewal will also impact the way we farm. Research shows that the conditions at farms operated by the next generation are better, not just in terms of economy, but also because young farmers have more interest in other values, such as sustainability, spending time with family, and being part of a society. To summarize, re-engaging youth to ensure sustainable generational renewal should be a crucial concern for all of us. What does look like from the perspective of Lely? How can we and other agricultural machinery providers contribute? As I said, Lely is a family business. 76 years ago, our founders, the brothers Cornelius and Darius van der Lely, thought the lives of farmers should be easier, and they could know. They were farmers on themselves and realized early on that a lot of work could be repetitive and physically demanding. The belief that farming should always be more enjoyable for the next generation, not just the son, but also the daughters, has remained. It's whenever my colleagues are entering partnership with farmers who adopt automation, there is a young farmer at the table who would not be willing to take over the farm without automation, because robotization and digitalization ensure that they can have a life outside of the farm as well. And because technology, such as ours, empowers them to become more sustainable. So what guides us in supporting the next generation? Why do we believe robotics are beneficial, especially for family farms and increasing access to farming for women? Our vision is a sustainable, profitable, and enjoyable future in farming. To that end, we have set our sight on delivering the farm of the future. The farm of the future starts with further improving animal welfare. Furthermore, we believe that innovation will improve our environmental impact, whatever it relates to climate, biodiversity, soil health, or water quality, all the while empowering the production of sustainable and nutritious dairy products, contributing to food security. This will contribute to consumer buy-in because consumers will be able to check and understand that their food is produced in a way they approve of. Finally, this improves farmer prosperity, not just the economic feasibility, but also work-life balance, employees who feel appreciated and being valued by society in general. These impact areas guide our future innovation because we believe in them and because they match the expectation the next generation farmer will have. Because it should be noted that it's especially young people who push us to deliver on our values. Whatever its customer is in Netherlands, in Canada, Brazil, or Korea, they choose Lely not because we are cheaper, we are not, but because they feel we will work toward a sustainable future with them. And it's the same story for my colleagues, wherever it's our service technician who are on farm in the middle of the night to resolve issues, or our engineers at their quarters, and everyone in between. They want to make sure sustainability is not just a story, but leads to actual results. We have a lot of work to do, but we did not start yesterday. Our current focus is in and around the dairy barn, where just over 30 years ago, we started a revolution with automated milking. Taking the cow as a center point, automation allows her to decide for herself when she wants to eat, drink, lie down, or be milked, with no obstacle whatsoever. A huge departure from conventional farming. The potential of data and AI deserves special mention in this light, not just for Lely, but for all the agricultural machinery providers. We are only scratching the surface of what we will be able to offer to improve farmers' insights and decision-making on, for example, cow health and welfare. Before wrapping up with our policy suggestions, I did want to share a practical example on how we engage with the youth. This gentleman is Dutch farmer Ayub. Born in Amsterdam, he's quite famous for his ambition to be the first dairy farmer of Moroccan descent in the Netherlands, with a 6-part television documentary, a big following on social media, and a lot of enthusiasm. He shares his insights about what farming looks like in the Netherlands. We therefore invited him to visit 3 farmers who use an automatic feeding solution, which improves cow health, production, and quality of life, also for the farmer. Afterwards, he shared his insights and lessons learned in an online talk show hosted by Lely. This is just one example. We also work with young farmers in other markets, including Italy, to showcase the beauty of farming and the benefit of innovation. I hope this brief introduction has shed some light onto what farming innovators such as Lely do to re-engage and support generational renewal. However, it should be clear that policymakers have a responsibility as well. First and foremost, let's talk with young farmers instead of about them. It sounds obvious, but the importance of getting their perspective cannot be overstated. Give them a seat at the table. Second, ensure that the targets are ambitious, achievable, and balanced. Ambitious because the challenges the next generation faces are immense. Achievable because drafting the blueprint is one thing. Bringing them together on the farm is something else, and balanced because we cannot ignore one topic when we are focused on another. Third, there are specific hurdles that young farmers face. Access to land, and often underlying that, access to finance is the starting point. Today, farmers have more knowledge than any other before, but the need to develop training and education further is vital. The number of times a farmer will invest during his lifetime is limited. The first time is very often when taking over the farm. By supporting them, then, we can ensure they can steer in the desired direction from the beginning. To conclude, it's great that we are discussing the role of youth in agri-food system transformation today, because it's a topic that deserves more attention. I hope you have gained some more insights into what the agricultural machinery industry can do now and hopes to do in the future, especially concerning the engagement of youth. And finally, make sure to continue this conversation with young farmers as well, to ensure we empower them to overcome their generation challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marzio, for this excellent perspective from Lely. I mean, I feel that we are entering the future already, and the challenges is huge, but with all this innovation, automation, robotic, I think we have a bright future for our youth. So thank you so much for your availability and sharing your knowledge with us, Marzio. Speakers and colleagues, there are questions already in Q&A chat box. If you would like to answer, please do so. And our participants, please feel free to put or to write your question in the Q&A box in particular, and the speaker will try to answer it. Now, Marzio said, let's continue this conversation. Let's bring the youth to the table. The next speaker is exactly this. Yeah, I'm pleased, to invite our youth, Miss Laitania Belaijanda, who is the indigenous environmental activist from the Dayak tribe of Kalimantan Island in Indonesia. She will be talking about indigenous youth and agriculture, why we cannot leave them behind. So she will be sharing with us her activities at the village level. Belai, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pak Yurdi. Good evening from Indonesia, everyone. It is a great honor to be a part of today's discussion. My name is Belai. I'm an indigenous environmental activist and a climate and health practitioner from the Dayak tribe of Indonesia's Borneo Island. While I do not call myself an agriculture expert, much of my work in forest conservation, planetary health, and climate justice in partnership with indigenous peoples are rooted in connection to land, making agriculture deeply intertwined in my scope of work. So today I will be sharing from my personal experiences around indigenous youth and agriculture and why we cannot leave them behind. I wanted to open with a quote from Ade Romero Briones, who beautifully said, "Indigenous peoples are as much part of the land as the land is part of us. We cultivate the land while the land cultivates us." In the full excerpt, she speaks about this relationship that her people nurture as they prepare land, plant seeds, cook the food that they grow. And to me, this resonates with agriculture as a practice of interbeing, connecting us with land and sacredness. I want us to come into this presentation with that shared understanding, because for indigenous peoples, agriculture is all about interconnection that goes beyond food production. Our day-to-day activities and community life revolve around agriculture, In a world that often compartmentalizes, indigenous systems connects, where agriculture goes hand in hand with land revitalization, forest conservation, biodiversity protection, and environmental health. It is also a source of culture. Within our Dayak community, for example, our rituals revolve around agriculture, where we have harvest festivals, sacred planting ceremonies, and daily traditions that are driven by agriculture. And of course, all of these values and ways of practicing agriculture contribute to climate action, which not only benefits the local community, but is crucial for the survival of people and living beings across the world. Mansang Kamanua, which from Dayak Iban translates to village empowerment, is one of the long-term projects that I co-lead, focusing on the youth of forest communities to become climate leaders who are aware and have ownership in climate action, delivered by and for indigenous young people. One of the key cross-cutting interventions that we are developing includes agriculture, which the community identifies as a key area of growth and resilience. Key to the planning process, which we are currently doing, is community listening. We hold long consultations with the communities to understand how they see indigenous youth leadership contributing to the long-term goals and ambitions, including their agricultural resilience. And today, I wanted to share 4 roles to highlight from these discussions. First is the role of indigenous youth in harvesting and preserving traditional knowledge. As someone working in the climate and health field, we learn about these seemingly new concepts, such as One Health or planetary health, which is about recognizing and repairing our relationship with nature to promote public health. And while this may be branded as a new way of thinking and doing, as an indigenous diaspora, I know that this is what our elders and ancestral wisdom has taught for generations, that we must build a reciprocal, non-extractivist relationship with nature in order to care for our health that is deeply interconnected with environmental health. Similarly, in the agri-food context, we are shifting to new ways of farming and building food systems that are more regenerative and sustainable, addressing the shortcomings of large-scale commercial and intensive agriculture. But yet again, concepts such as agroforestry and crop diversification, these are rooted in indigenous knowledge systems, the same systems that have also been forcefully taken away from us due to colonization and displacement of our communities. There is an element of justice and appropriation that is missing in these conversations. But right now, I wanted to focus on the fact that we recognize this indigenous knowledge is crucial in repairing our agriculture systems, and how perhaps we do not know yet the depths of this knowledge. To that end, indigenous youth play a key role in accessing and preserving this knowledge from our elders. Moreover, youth are now more innovative in presenting knowledge, from film documentaries to academic research and campaigns that reach global audiences. Youth have more access and space to share knowledge to the world. So this role and opportunity is urgent and must be supported. Second is in localizing modern systems. Today, we face many challenges in maintaining our indigenous agricultural practices. For example, our traditional way of practicing shifting cultivation and land rotation is no longer doable where there is limited access to land due to poor land rights recognition for indigenous communities. Other factors, including culturally sensitive training that is lacking, social barriers, poor economic opportunities, and the challenge of farming in the current climate, it is all a threat to our survival and resilience. It is therefore important that in the pursuit of preserving these practices, we also acknowledge the need to adapt. And indigenous youth play a key role in this. They understand what is culturally valued and important to protect, but they can also learn new knowledge and new ways of farming that could be localized to their context to build community resilience. So indigenous youth are the bridge and indigenous youth are the balance. Third is our role in building food-people connection and food literacy. I believe that our modern relationship with food is broken. And because of that brokenness, we are seeing a detachment from food resources where many people don't even know where their food comes from because of urbanization and industrialization. As Ms. Janetta mentioned earlier, there is a prevalence of highly processed food that is changing our diet, distancing ourselves from natural ingredients and traditional cooking methods. We see unsustainable practices such as excessive pesticide use, deforestation, long-distance food transportation, all amounting to the environmental degradation and breakdown that we are witnessing today. We see health issues surfacing from nutrient deficiency because of how accessible, highly processed, and non-nutritious foods are, and how modern lifestyles promote overconsumption and food waste. We also know there are inequities being exacerbated from centralized control of food and unequal access to healthy food due to socioeconomic disparities and a loss of cultural practices, which results in the homogenization of diets, the loss of traditional foods and culinary recipes, and even the erosion of food heritage itself. What I see is key to addressing these challenges is our reconciling with land, which is something that indigenous knowledge and agriculture systems can help address. From community-based agriculture, promoting environmental stewardship, empowering local farmers, and reviving cultural practices, going back to what our elders taught us is key to repairing our relationship with land and therefore repairing our relationship with food. And fourth, it is important to re-establish the value of farming, the value of producing food that feeds our communities, the value of protecting systems that build our climate resilience, and in creating livelihoods that meet our young people's economic needs. There is a systemic and collective narrative change that needs to happen so that our youth can find value, dignity, and pride in protecting agriculture. And again, agriculture is a long-term thing. The changes that we make today will not take into effect until 10 to 20 years from now, by which it is my generation and our generation that feels its impact. So it's important that we are involved in creating this transformation so we have ownership over our own future as well. Something I often say is that culture cannot survive as a museum. While cultural values persist, the way we practice it inevitably evolve over time. Our values to farm in regenerative, ecologically sound ways, these values must persist, but how we practice that may change with new challenges and new opportunities. And who better to lead this process of evolution than the next generation of the community themselves? Finally, I want to highlight the importance of guiding principles. It's crucial to transform through a lens of decolonization, equity, justice, indigenous leadership, FPIC frameworks, and more. We must ensure that the future we envision for agriculture dismantle the systemic oppression and marginalization of indigenous peoples across the world, and genuinely allow for indigenous youth to engage and lead this transformation, involving more youth voices in spaces like this, and being careful that we do not tokenize young people or youth wash this narrative. Because when we allow indigenous agricultural knowledge to thrive, we allow for more holistic approaches to agriculture, ecologically sound ways of food production, the protection of food sovereignty and health locally and globally, the creation of sustainable livelihoods and economic opportunities, and of course, contributing to climate action, which benefits all of us. Finally, I close with 3 key takeaways for all of us to reflect on. First is that agriculture is at a crossroads. We are seeing the shortcomings of the current agriculture systems, and we need new ways of evolving. Indigenous knowledge systems is what we need to guide us toward a thriving future for food systems and planetary health. Secondly, the role of indigenous youth, who are key catalysts in preserving and sharing indigenous knowledge, and equally in building community agricultural resilience by adapting and localizing modern agricultural techniques. And finally, reminding us all that this is a shared responsibility. Decolonizing and dismantling broken systems require collective effort. It is not just the responsibility of youth or indigenous youth, but everyone who is involved. We must work collaboratively, creating space for indigenous leadership and fostering intergenerational, cross-sectoral, and international cooperation for a better future that we all envision to live in. With that, I close my presentation and hand it back to Payurdi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Belai, for this really powerful presentation. Like Marzio said, we need to bring youth to the table, and colleagues, and Belai is an example. She's just 22 years old, and she's already doing a lot of projects, with her community back in Kalimantan, with the global activism that she is doing. So we are so fortunate to hear from you, Belai, from these, concrete examples. Youth leadership is important. Yeah? You are shaping the future. You want to determine how the future would look like for you and for your generation. So with that, Belai, thank you very much for the opportunity to learn from you, actually, for all of us, from all over the world. I can see around 230 people here from Asia, Africa, Latin America, from Europe to learn, the wisdom of the indigenous knowledge and practices that we need to allow to thrive, as you say. With that, it is my pleasure to invite the next speakers. Last but not the least, my colleague here in FAO headquarters, Myling Flores Rojas. She's an agriculture engineer. She will be talking about youth leadership in agricultural mechanization. Some good news. So let's listen to Myling, who is also very young. Myling, over to you.
Thank you, Jordi, so much for the opportunity. Is it okay how you see the presentation?
Maybe you can put it in the presentation mode.
All right. Is it okay now? Yeah, excellent. So as Jordi said, I'm going to talk about a few examples that I hope can inspire you in terms of youth leadership. And I also would like to bring to the table also specific examples of what FAO is doing to create jobs for young people. Now, let's start with this very strong statement. Youth unemployment rate is 3 times that of adults in all regions of the world. This is very sad, and this needs to be changed, and it needs to be changed yesterday. We're wasting time. We need to do something. I want to do it now. And I want to highlight what FAO is specifically doing to address this big problem. Last year, we organized the Global Conference on Sustainable Agricultural Mechanization, and we prepared within that conference a call to action. And one of the call to action was specifically for youth. And it reads that we need to attract youth, and we encourage members of FAO to do this, to attract youth to work and innovate on mechanization and digitalization. And how this can be done. More specifically, we need to support entrepreneurship that can open up opportunities for young people. We need also to give them finance and subsidies because, as we know and has been repeated before, they lack this capital and this investment capacity. We also need to bring and develop mentorship programs. Youth people need to be accompanied in this journey of development. And finally, skills. Skills is a big obstacle for youth. We need to make sure that the skills that we facilitate them to gain matches what the job or the job opportunities that exist. This is very critical. Now, I want to give you a specific examples of when you put together these elements, into what is transformed. So let me introduce you a couple of young leaders that I have had the opportunity to meet in my career. They came last year to Rome to present in an event that it was called Voices of Youth for Sustainable Agricultural Mechanization and Digitalization. He is Samuel Kaume. He's from Cote d'Ivoire. He is the CEO and a founder of a small businesses. His journey started really when he graduated as an agricultural engineer. And he had this push or this opportunity when he gained a prize for entrepreneurs in his country. Now he is working with cassava along the value chains. He's providing mechanization services from planting to harvesting and transport, and even working with seeds together with research centers. He is improving by his work and his business the livelihoods of rural communities. And this is extremely important. And not only that, let me tell you that Samuel is also creating jobs in rural communities. He has about 20 young employees and about the same seasonal workers coming and leaving his business. Let me introduce you now to Yacine Reyes. She's from Mexico. She's a technical advisor and researcher. She is working with the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, CIMIT. This is a very well-known research center in the world. Now she is in charge, despite of her young age, of a center that is found in the south of Mexico, and she's working closely with farmers to translate the research and the knowledge and the data that she collects into better opportunity for farmers by increasing their yields, by reducing the drudgery of farmers, and by making mechanization available for them. This is also extremely important. Let's go now to Nepal. Sanjeev Bimali, he's a government official. Again, one of his roles is to influence policies. And I mean, this is good news. No, we have a young person full of passion, full of knowledge, because he's also an agricultural engineer, very knowledgeable in the topic, that he's shaping these policies in his countries now and in the future. He's not only doing that, but he's also training women and men in the communities. So this is also very inspiring. Now let's move to Mauritania. This is Aziza. She's an incubator and a co-founder of Adida Rimti in her country. They have so far, well, and when I say so far, that was last year, there are many more now. They have trained more than 700 people, young people, and they have supported the startup of more than 25 businesses being led by young people. So this is a continuous work that they are doing, including in the agri-food systems, which again is very, very important and nice. And finally, Marta. Marta is from Germany. She is the CEO and co-founder of a startup working in robotics. And what is very exciting about them, this is the group of people that are behind the company. As you can see from the picture, they're from different backgrounds, very energetic people. And what they dream of is to make the high-tech technology available, useful, and available to masses. You know, this is the time of mindset that young people has. No, the limit is the sky, and they do it. They try at least the best to succeed in that journey of making the dreams come true. Now, I would like I think we agree that we need more youth leaders like the ones that I presented, and of course there are many more. And I'm sure many of the participants are youth leaders themselves. Now, as we need more youth leaders, we also need more jobs for youth. And I want to bring to the table specific examples of what FAO is doing for that, and in terms or linked to mechanization and in the overall, within the overall agri-food systems. So we organize trainings at technical level and business skills at different countries, in different countries. And so, for example, we have created jobs for machine operators targeting youth. We have also trained them in business skills, and so they can become service providers, meaning they can provide services in any operation of related to agriculture to community members for a fee. So they generate income and they become entrepreneurs themselves. We have worked also and continue working with the small-scale agri-food processors, adding value to the products, having better incomes, and reducing the food losses. When you increase the value of the product, usually you need to sell them also through different channels that also become a new job opportunity for other people, like retailers. We also work with technical advisors, and we target youth because they are full of energy, as we know, and eager to learn and eager to enter the workforce that they are missing in many cases. And again, all these linked to mechanization. We work with mechanics because if we have trainings and we have materials to guide them on how to support this activity. And finally, welders. There's only few examples of what we do concretely at country level in this area of creating jobs for youth. Now, let me go to my final slide, and it's just a reflection and a confirmation or repetition of what has been said. We need more youth leaders. We need more jobs for youth, and we have to do it now. So let's start working together. Let's continue working together towards that end. Thank you very much, Jordi.
Thank you very much, Mei-Ling, for this excellent presentation with examples of how youth, are leading changes in different parts of the world, particularly those that you have met. And this is really inspiring, Mei-Ling. We need to connect this youth. That's what we have heard from the panelists. Excellent Mei-Ling, and also excellent on how we can support the youth initiative globally from FAO itself. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us, Mei-Ling. Colleagues, there are a lot of questions about whether we can get the presentation of the presenters. Please note that this webinar is recorded with the intention is that those who cannot follow can watch it later. So it will be available later on at the Plant Production and Protection Division's website, NSP. Maybe Miriam, you can write the website so that people who want to revisit this webinar can revisit it later. Most of the questions around how to get internship with FAO. I think this is a good question, colleagues or young people. My advice to you is keep watching the FAO vacancy or website. This is the best first information that you need to know when certain internships open for application. Okay. Colleagues, we still have 2 minutes of time before we go to the closing. There is one question here, Janet, if you want to answer. How do we encourage youth to participate in agriculture business in Africa? Maybe you can shed a bit more light on this, Janet, quickly.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. It's very loaded. The answer is going to be very, very loaded because we need to look at it from all sides. We need to look at it on how we're addressing young people themselves. So working on this mindset change, because at least in the region, you tell somebody, a young person, to get involved in agriculture, that's not the first option that they're going to think of when they look at potential employment opportunities, but it's about highlighting the potential that exists, the entrepreneurship opportunities that exist, and then just saying it is not enough, but showing the good practices, identifying the champions who are already engaged, some of which that Mei-Ling has mentioned, people like Belai, highlighting those examples, bringing them to the fore for them to see that, oh, really, somebody who's exactly like me is involved in agriculture and is successful. So bringing those good examples forward and fostering that mindset change. And then also from the level of the policymakers, and this went towards some of the coherence aspect that I mentioned, to having youth targeted in the interventions with regards to fostering skills development, so targeted skills development, fostering the technical business and knowledge and skills, providing them with access to markets, exposure, and then also the affordable financing. So we talk a lot about access to finance, but I think we need to change the conversation around that also. There is financing available, but how do we really get it to how do we make that reach the young people? What are the opportunities with blended financing, innovative financing models, green financing at the moment? How do we ensure that all these opportunities actually reach the young people who really have great business ideas and have a vision for what they want to achieve within the agri-food sector? So the answer is packed, but there's so many examples, and we can share more in the chat.
That is fine, Janetta. Very useful indeed. A lot of things we can do. I think that there are 2 more questions that remain unanswered. If any of the speakers would like to answer it in writing, you are most welcome. One question is from Ismail. Another one is from Bertin about the deadline to apply for World Food Forum. I think Kazuki, on the last question, you might want to answer that in writing. And then the question from Ismail is actually, technology for farming. Maybe I would like, in terms of this technology, maybe Marzio, you would want to share very quickly, 1 minute, the types of technology that have increased or boost production based on Lely experience. Marzio, can you do that in 1 minute, please?
Yes, but when I look at Lely business, so we are focused on the dairy sector. What we have to look into the market is the market circumstances. So such as dairy sector scale, labor cost, they need to match with our proposition. So this can change in the future in some countries. That's why we are in 52 countries today. We are continuing analyzing other countries where we can bring the technology for the dairy farming. I don't know whenever this can happen, but it could take some long time in some countries. But there are several factors that need to be checked every time into the market before we bring the technology into that market.
Thank you, Marzio, for your answers. Participants, dear colleagues, we have come to the end, unfortunately, of this really interesting discussion around youth in agriculture food, in agri-food system transformation. It is now my pleasure to end the webinar, to invite Mr. Abebe Haile Gabriel, the FAO Assistant Director General and Regional Representative of Africa, to share his closing remark and perspective from this rich discussion and bringing things together. Abebe, over to you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Yurdi, dear colleagues, panelists, participants. 1 hour and a half later, we still have close to 200 participants. This is really an excellent session. Thanks, Yurdi and colleagues, for organizing it. Today's event has highlighted the important role that agri-food systems can play in providing opportunities for young people all along the value chains as entrepreneurs and workers in the provision of inputs and services to agriculture producers, including digital technology services, aggregation, transportation, processing, packaging, marketing, and so on. Yet, unfortunately, this vast potential remains largely untapped due to the several challenges facing the sector in general and youth particularly. The good news is that despite these challenges, we recognize the leadership that the youth have demonstrated, basically in transforming the landscape through innovation, be it in deploying artificial intelligence to aid in pest and disease control, for example, leading the way in mechanization, adding value to traditional crops, providing climate-smart advice, and so on. Imagine just how much more they could achieve with the favorable policies, incentives, and support if they can get that. FAO has implemented important interventions in support of youth in agri-food systems, as we have heard from our colleagues and panelists. In Africa, most recently, the FAO UNIDO joint program entitled Opportunities for Youth in Africa, OYA program, has helped to build the capacity of over 4,000 youth and 750 youth-led MSMEs in 6 countries in the last 3 years. And FAO's integrated country approach for promoting decent jobs for youth in the agri-food systems has just launched its 4th phase, covering 3 countries, Zambia, Vietnam, and Ecuador in 3 regions. Going forward, we need to be more intentional in targeting young people in the design and implementation of investment projects. To do this, we need to ask ourselves some difficult questions, such as how well have our interventions worked so far? Have their impacts been sustained over the years? Are these results commensurate to the youth employment challenge, or are we just barely scratching the surface? We need to understand which type of interventions work better for different categories of youth and in different contexts, as they are not a homogeneous group. We need to conduct the necessary impact evaluations, document the good practices, and scale up the solutions that work. FAO has developed various guidance materials and tools to support youth employment promotion, often in partnership with national and regional institutions. In Africa, I would like to especially mention the FAO, the African Union Commission Investment Guidelines for Youth in Agri-Food Systems, and the Youth Sensitive Value Chain Analysis and Development Guide, which offer practical guidance on improving the design of youth-responsive interventions. We need to utilize such guidance in much more systematic and intentional manner, notably in the design of large-scale programs, including for vertical funds. It's crucial that we leverage innovative financing mechanisms, successful models for bridging the skills gap, public-private partnerships, and in the African case, we have the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement and other opportunities to unlock the potential of youth and agri-food systems. We also seek to leverage FAO's corporate initiatives, such as the hand-in-hand initiative, the digital initiative, villages, the One Country, One Priority Product Initiative, and so on, to deliver favorable employment outcomes at national level for youth. The transformation of agri-food system hinges on the active participation and empowerment of our youth. By providing opportunities, fostering innovation, and supporting youth through strategic partnerships and policies, we can ensure a sustainable and prosperous future for all. Let's work together to empower today's and tomorrow's leaders and pave the way for a vibrant and resilient agri-food system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abebe, for nicely putting things together at the end of this webinar. Still, 190, close to 190 colleagues from all over the world joining us. This is really a testimony of the importance of the subject. From my side, from the organizer of this webinar, I would like to thank you, all the panelists, for your great speeches and presentation. And to those who participate, in this webinar, thank you for your interest. Stay tuned. We will continue to provide information regarding youth in agriculture food transformation through our website. And once again, this topic is a topic for everybody. We can only make youth initiatives successful if we are working together, if we allow the youth to thrive, if we bring the youth to the table. With that, colleagues, I would like from the bottom of my heart to thank all of you, and until next time, bye-bye.